Good morning, good morning. Is everyone awake out there? Good morning, my brothers and sisters. This morning I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing to you a legend. I was asked to make this introduction, and I did some research, and that was my one word that I thought that I could share, that this man is a legend, and then sit down and bring him to the stage. But my instructions are to share a bit more about Senator Sir Roy Trotman. Senator Sir Roy Trotman is a highly respected trade unionist who, since joining the labor movement in 1971, has achieved notable results throughout his career. His commitment to action rather than sheer rhetoric has been the predominant force behind the many positions of leadership he has held locally, regionally, and internationally. He joined the Barbados Workers' Union as a personal appointed Deputy General Secretary, Director of Organizing, 9 years later. In these roles, he was largely responsible for negotiations, grievance handling, organizing, and education in labor studies. He acted as General Secretary for 8 months before his election to that post on the 29th of August, 1992. Nationally, Sir Roy served as a member of the lower house during the period 1986 to 1994. He is founder and president of the Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations of Barbados, a position he has held since 1995. These contributions, together with his contribution on a myriad of boards and committees as a labor representative, bear testimony of his drive and passion for effecting positive change in public service. This devotion was further extended regionally as he has held the position of President of the Caribbean Congress of Labor for 2 consecutive terms, spanning 1989 to 1995. Internationally, Sir Roy distinguished himself as the first Black president of the International Confederation of Free Trade Unions, now the International Trade Union Congress. He held this position for 2 consecutive 4-year terms since 1992 and currently serves this organization as Vice President. He also serves with distinction as one of the directors of the International Labor Organization, where he was elected to and served as chairperson of the workers' group of the ILO governing body since 2002. Sir Roy is an alumni of the University of West Indies, where he gained a degree in English, economics, and history. He also completed his master's in labor education from Rutgers University in 1976. His commitment and dedication to outstanding national, regional, and international service was given national recognition, firstly in 2002, when he was made Knight of St. Andrew in the Independence Honors, and then again in October 2006 during UWI's graduation ceremonies when he was conferred with an honorary Doctor of Laws degree. Sir Roy is married to Margaret Trotman and is the father of 2 daughters, Paula and Leslie. Brothers and sisters, I ask that you join me in welcoming to the stage Senator Sir Roy Trotman.
I have to remember to pay for that advertisement. I'm sure her mother told her to do that. I wish, ladies and gentlemen, to thank you very kindly indeed for inviting me to the Bermudas on this occasion. On the very first time that I came, I was concerned with trying to build trade union unity, and the reason for my visit on that occasion was that I was endeavoring to have Bermuda establish a trade union council or confederation. imagine my pleasure on arrival on this occasion to be able to address not only one union, not only the other of my two major unions, but to be able to address the Trade Union Council or Confederation of the Bermudas. Congratulations to you. I said congratulations to you. You know, I'm not going to deliver this address if I'm going to have so many silent and quiet people. So I gave up the $1,500,000 I was going to get to address another crowd today. And the reason for that was that I heard that there was a splendid reception if you felt that persons were saying things that were important. And I chose to give up that 1.5 because I thought Bermuda would be able to respond appropriately at the right times. Please tell me now whether I should go quickly.
It's still $1 million.
It's down to $1 million, but I can still go. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I think that with protocol established, I need merely to do one more thing, if you will allow me. Ever since my first arrival in this country around 1991, I was impressed by 3 labor leaders, and now I am tremendously impressed by 2 other labor leaders. The first 3 are seniors. They haven't passed on anywhere, but they're seniors. The other 2 will reach that stage, and I refer to Chris, who is now the president of the BIU and who is in the present, Chris Ferber. And I refer as well to young Ali Ball, who has been doing a tremendous job first as assistant to Eugene Blakeney, and now in his own right as the General Secretary of the BPSU. But I'd wish today to make you aware that you in the Bermudas have been very fortunate, having had Barbara Ball of lamented memory, but dearly lamented memory, to be able to raise such respected labor leaders across the world as Molly Burgess, who is here and whom I salute, as Ottewell Simmons, whom I don't see, but who is a legend not merely in the Bermudas, and I hope you can afford to spare him with us, and with another of my dear friends, Eugene Blakeney, who has been sitting next to me. Together you are shooting and punching well beyond your size of 64,000 people. I congratulate you for that tremendous record in labor leadership. I think it is important that you give your kudos to those persons who are able to smell the roses when you hand them to them. And therefore, on behalf of the entire labor movement of the Caribbean, and indeed in my old position in behalf of labor leaders of the workers' world for whom I was the spokesman, I wish very humbly to say thank you very much, Molly Burgess, Eugene Blakeney, and Ottewell Simmons, for your service to the working class of the world. In preparing for this discussion, which Ed and Chris asked me to have with you way back in October, I thought that I would wait until I got closer to the date of the presentation, and that I would endeavor to discover what was happening on the ground here in Bermuda. I wanted to ensure that what exchanges that we would have today would relate to the here and to the now, and where possible, would assist us in looking forward to tomorrow. In that search to discover what was happening, I was brought face to face with the words of one of your publications by a Miss Ciola Wilson, and that was on the 4th of December last year. And I quote just a wee bit of what she said. "I've heard too many people say it's time to riot. When black people riot, they destroy their own property." Not my words, but I think that I share them with Ciola Wilson. The context of those words was a public response which there was to the Sage Commission's report calling for privatization and outsourcing. A number of things present themselves clearly to the observer when that observer follows the reaction. If the Ciola Wilson article is to be credited, then there was a reaction to the labor market initiatives which were contemplated, and it seems are contemplated, and that reaction called for violent, emotional, destructive responses. Perhaps that reaction was prompted by the scale of the recommendation. As I understand it, Bermuda has a population of just over 64,000 persons. It has a labor force of just about 39,000 persons, 38,500. And it has a public service of 4,479, and that was according to the Labor Survey last year. And so for me, and I have no doubt that for you too, a layoff of 2,000 public servants, as represented in the Sage report, would be an occasion for grave anxiety in any country, in any part of the world. And while as a non-resident, I would not know for sure, as an international labor leader, I will not have to go too far to guess who it will be who will be having sleepless nights and shattered dreams. I understand all too well that when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. And I understand equally well that when elephants make love, it is the same grass that suffers. The workers are the grass. I said the workers are the grass. That dimension of the problem, ladies and gentlemen, is perhaps what is driving another concern that I would not have you dismiss. The concern that I detect in the article regarding race and color. The Wilson article endeavors to set aside the call to riot, but does so in terms which divide the dominant races in your country. I urge you to reread the article. I urge you to read what is on the line, and I urge you to read what you find between the lines. Those among you who are reading and are not understanding, or who are reading and are choosing not to understand the implications in this manner, may be making the same error that a housemaker makes when he sees a fire coming from the direction of his own home, but denies that it is his house purely because he has the key in his pocket. I urge you to read between the lines, and not only to read the lines. Incidentally, I understand that there are some school children who want you to be with us, and if Brother Eddie, they are here, this would be a good time to acknowledge our young leadership from the schools and to congratulate them. And if they're not here, then it's a good time to tell them that they, as the workforce of tomorrow, need to be concerned as we are with this debate, because we, as workers in the workforce today, in many cases may be accused of having served our time and being ready to go out to pasture. They represent the future, and this particular problem will not go away and will have implications for people all over Bermuda for many, many years yet to come. I have taken the liberty to treat to this specific response from Ms. Wilson to your national challenge. As I prepared last January to discuss the options regarding the way forward, I found myself in Barbados faced with a similar clarion call that my union, the Barbados Workers' Union, should lead a violent response by the angry Barbadian politician and negative public to the Barbados plan to lay off not your 2,000, but 3,000 public servants. Barbados has a little larger population. In the public service, we ran up to 28,000. So our proportion is not as great. Yet one person laid off is one person too many. And therefore 2,000 too many, and we have to see what we can do to ease the pain and the suffering. The message which I shared with Barbados is the same message that I would wish to share with you. And I urge you to reason with me regarding what it may be that we can do. The challenge which we have on this occasion is that the action which is contemplated may be so oppressive that it may seem to stifle your breath. And because it's stifling, you may wish to lash out. There can be nothing unnatural about wishing to lash out. And yet, as the guardians of the livelihoods of workers, as the delegates here to this conference should be, you have to restrain yourself from responding naturally, and you have to give pause and careful consideration to what it is that is before you at this time. When you surrender to the first impulse, I ask you, what is it that you are likely to be doing? Is it not possible that your counterpart, your opponent, or your protagonist, whatever term you choose to use, has studied you like a book and is nudging you towards that very response that comes naturally? And when you act not as you should have thought, but you act instinctively, what will be the consequences for your constituents and for your children and for their children. What will be the result down the road? Sometimes it is a great thing to speed. Speed may be of the essence, but sometimes you will find that it is better to hurry slowly. 20 years ago, in my country, we were faced with this crisis for the first time. And when our Prime Minister spoke to us to indicate that he had a crisis, there were very many knee-jerk reactions, and people were saying, like the disciples of Christ, Lord, let us build this, and Lord, let us do that. And we in the BWU, I was fortunate to be leading, decided the answer does not lie in being angry or frustrated, because anger and frustration ultimately lead to the destruction of our citizenship. And so we in the labor movement and we in the Barbados Workers Union said, let us now as a trade union body reason together, and we brought together a set of very disparate trade union leaders into a homogeneous body which we call the Coalition of Trade Unions and Staff Associations. And that has led us to responses which I think were salubrious and salutary. We established our tripartite social partnership. And somebody would ask me, why tripartite? And I argue to you that it is only in the world of work that we are really able to find wealth, to create it, to develop it, to nourish it, and to share it. I said to share it. I don't know, this is a trade union meeting, is it? Oh, yes. I said, and to share the wealth. Not only to get it, I see some of my employer friends with us, and we want to help you build the wealth, but we also know how to help you share that wealth. Please don't keep it for yourselves. And so we established that although there may be the speculative world and the world that collapses as it did in 2007, it is the world where people work with their hands and produce goods and services. That is the world where there is viable wealth to be created. And our tripartite social partnership, made up of the government, employers, and workers, represents the formal documented compact drawn up by labor, capital, and governments to work together, to examine the nation's challenges together, and to work together to arrive at long-term solutions. Each party committed to sharing the pain as well as to sharing the gain. I think it's very important. The preamble to our very first exercise was a preamble to what we called wages and incomes policy, prices and incomes policy. But even then we were aware, as your young people must be aware, that economic growth is good, but that economic growth has no true value for you unless it is balanced by social development. Those words were put together much better than I could by the now famous Mr. Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, way back when he spoke to the Social Summit in Europe in 2002. We should create wealth not merely for private profit, but we should be ready to have that wealth created and shared for the national well-being. And so, in our first prices and incomes policy, we were governed by this preamble that says that the government, employers' representatives, and workers' representatives, hereafter called the partners, acknowledge that the success of Barbados, and you should reread that, the success of the Bermudas as a nation has been due in large measure to its peaceful and harmonious labor management relations, and that these relations have been characterized by the maturity exercised in industrial relations by the social partners. I read Barbados, you heard Bermuda, and I think you were right. The partners recognize that such maturity springs from the acceptance that tripartism is the most sound and effective strategy through which a commitment to national cooperation and development may be realized. I read Barbados, you heard Bermuda, and you were right. The social partners were affirming that sound relations may be maintained only by their commitment to the principles laid down by the International Labour Organization for the just and equitable development of labor and capital. More particularly, the principles of the freedom of association and the right to bargain collectively. I read Barbados, and you should have heard Bermuda. Our first commitment then was to a prices and incomes policy in our country, and that has grown immensely over time, so that now we are able to look at more things, including the establishment of an environment which will bring Barbados goods and services into a more competitive position at home and abroad. I said Barbados. You heard Bermuda. We reached the stage where we talk now of the promotion of mechanisms which, within this search for a competitive position for Barbados, will achieve restraint in wages and other compensation payments, as well as prices. I said Barbados. We went further to the restructuring of the economy on a sustainable basis, with opportunities being given for workers and employers alike to make a greater contribution to planning and redevelopment, and also to sharing in the fruits of that improved economy. And then the promotion of a national commitment to improve productivity and increase efficiency, so that by reducing wastage and by enhancing national performance, the country will be able to heighten its attractiveness to investors, thereby further extending the opportunities for employment. I read Barbados. You ought to have heard Bermuda. To use my language, what we were up against then and what you are up against now is not Bermuda fighting against Bermudans, not Barbadians fighting against Barbadians, but you find yourself fighting against an international arena. Our aim was to reduce the level of unemployment. We sought to, and we succeeded in rallying the country against the popular enemy. The popular enemy is any threat there is to your economic survival. And we thought we would do that without indulging in the blame game. And so I would wish to extend a healthy big up to the Leader of the Opposition for making the statement this morning that his party decided to stay clear of the blame game when in fact the government had to take initiatives and wanted to meet with the trade union movement. 20 years ago, I needed to leave my office and go to the office of the Leader of the Opposition in my country and ask him one question, and the question was, do you have a better proposal to submit? And when he kept silence, I said, well, put up or shut up. If we have a problem to steer the economy in the best interests of the entire country, then these matters cannot allow themselves to be used as the footballs in the game of play, counter and repass and further counter, when in fact we are dealing with the lives of children who are yet to be born. A very important thing that we underlined, which I would believe that you need to do in Bermuda as well, is that we sought to underline the voluntaristic model of labor management relations, because we had argued that ever since we had gone the route of the creation of trade unions, we had served within the voluntaristic model, and that had served Barbados well, and that it remained essential if we would maintain industrial harmony. I think that you also followed that model, and you will find that agreements based on honor and a compromise and the shaking of the hand will serve you much better than the highly regulated system that is trying to make the trends across to your western borders rather than to follow the model which we have grown to follow, to believe in, and which has succeeded for us so well in the past. After all, in doing so, we are committed to the fundamental human and trade union rights, and we are serving our country in a manner that will serve to make greater the work that you are going to be doing in your tripartite efforts to rebuild Bermuda and to make it better and stronger than it was before. We thought that if we were going to expand our social partnership, that we needed to do so reaching greater levels of inclusiveness beyond the original structure, and that we had to be ensuring that we work harder together to solve those problems standing in the way of our socio-economic development. We went further, and we have therefore in Barbados something which I don't think is copied by many other people. We delivered a May Day declaration prepared by us. Yes, I would accept that I was the author, but happily signed on to by employers in Barbados and by the government, because we were of the view that if we were going to build the country, we ought not to allow May Day to be symbolic of the occasion where we fought against the employer, but rather to be symbolic of the occasion where the employer became converted to want to fight alongside us, to fight against the enemies of the progress of our country, and so they marched side by side with us at May Day as we struggled to make our country stronger for all of us. And that was because, you see, we acknowledged that Barbados owes its present stage of development to the work, dedication, and the commitments of Barbadians from all walks of life. I said Barbados. You heard Bermuda. We accept that some Barbadians have not been afforded their full opportunity to contribute to that personal development for our country. And we realize that this lack of opportunity is one of the major causes of some of the fractures within the country, and that we have to do what we can to remove it for greater development. That is the view we had of Barbados. I believe it ought to be the view that you have of Bermuda. We believe then, in 2004 when we wrote this, that the deficit in the overall national effort has contributed in part to those areas of community dysfunction which Barbados is experiencing and which are manifested in the marginalization and exclusions that have to be eradicated. And I think that that same problem that I speak of for Barbados is one where we need to see Bermuda. I'll give you another example. We are aware that despite our best national efforts, the prevailing levels of unemployment and underemployment with their attendant social ills have the potential to frustrate many of our goals as a nation and as our people. That is what we wrote for Barbados. I think you will know, and if you have not yet known, you will soon know, that if there is underemployment and unemployment, that there will be attendant social evils that will remove and eradicate and marginalize all the great work that you have been striving to do. I urge you to recognize that these are very real challenges. Our search has been a search, together with the employers and the governments, to bring dignity to work, not only in Barbados, but wherever our influence may extend.